Hello and welcome to Black Bear Atheist. Not too long ago, I tried to do a video on this channel, A Messenger of Truth. I tried to do a video recording on him. I think I did on two videos, but the audio on there was so bad I couldn't post it. But he just recently posted a video. I think this is like the second video that he's posting on how to know Christianity is true or how to know God exists. But because he recently posted a video about evolution and bunch of, I think there's few atheist channel that speak and respond to him. I know Aaron Raw for a fact respond to him because I watched that video, and some other atheist channel respond to him. And I know some few like a channel like Professor Dave, not exactly, but he's a science communicator. He also respond to his video. So I think this is why he's making this video of how to prove God existence to any atheist. Because usually you just say how to prove Christianity is true. So here we're gonna have I think four reasons of how you could prove, not just argue, prove that God exists to a Christian to an atheist. And the Christian God, obviously, not just any God, because that would be a waste of time, right? So let's get into the video. And trigger warning, this guy is really, really like, I don't want to say stupid before I introduce him to you all, but is, you see what I mean.
I'm going to explain how you, as a Christian, can prove to any atheist you meet that God exists. A bunch of this is going to be from a Bonson lecture. If you want to listen to that, link is in the bio. Before I give you the proofs for God's existence, we have to recognize two things right off the bat. Number one, Romans 1 tells us that every human already knows God, but they did not glorify him as God or give him thanks, but they became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish heart was darkened. The scriptures teach that God himself has already proven himself to everybody. He is evident within their own hearts, their own minds, and God made it evident to them. The problem is their hearts, they are wicked. They suppress the truth in unrighteousness. And by the way, if there are atheists out there who truly do not know that God exists, then they would be with excuse. They would be on the day of judgment justified in their unbelief because they didn't have enough knowledge. They didn't know that God existed, but that's wrong. So the fact is, nobody
What do you mean that's wrong?
needs an argument for the existence of God. What people need is to be called out on their sin and called to repentance so that they believe in the gospel and get saved. Second thing we have to recognize.
Before we recognize the second thing, I would like to point out that this guy is talking nonsense. You literally make the entire video to say how to prove God existence, and then now you're talking about argument. Nobody needs argument for God existence. Nobody's talking about argument. We're talking about evidence, because arguments don't prove things. Hey, we're talking about evidence here. And also, if you're gonna start the entire video of how to prove God's existence to any atheist with, oh, they're not even trying to understand God exists. They're not even trying to look for God. They already know. Everybody know there's a God. They just deny God in their heart. So Muslims fasting, like, I don't know, in Ramadan, devoting their entire livelihood to Islam, know that the Christian God is true, but worshiping Allah instead. That seems stupid. A billion people, more than a billion people, are denying the existence, and none of them are coming out and saying, "Yeah, we know the Christian God is true. We're just denying it and fasting." Like it's such a dumb thing to say. It is not denying the existence of God. There's no evidence to say God exists. There's no conclusive evidence to say a God exists, especially the Christian God. So quoting your Bible does not affect anything. We don't genuinely care. I guess this first few part is for Christians. It doesn't make any sense. You're trying to convince atheists, and now you're speaking through your other mouth to Christians. Eh, let's keep going.
Is that there's a difference between proof and persuasion. I can prove God's existence all day long, but someone who does not want God to exist and wants to live in their sin is not going to accept it. For example, let's say that there's a guy who's 400 pounds, never takes showers, doesn't have a job, and is overall just a useless human being, but he wants to get a girlfriend, and he goes out and asks
The fuck is a useless human? A useless human being? Isn't that like a subjective view of it? Like, don't we like put value on what is useful and what isn't? I mean, you go outside and you see a random rock. What is that rock? Is that rock useful for you at that specific moment in time? No, but could it be useful to somebody else? Yes. Like, it's an analogy, but like, it's a weird thing to say.
asks all sorts of women for their numbers, and they all say no. All of his friends who love him so much are going to tell him, lose the weight, take showers, clean your act up. These are the reasons, these are the proofs for why women aren't going out with you. This is all perfectly reasonable, but the man is selfish. You see, he thinks that women don't like him because the women are the problem. They just don't see what a good man I am. They don't see through all of the surface level stuff. I have a really good heart on the inside. It's their fault that they're not accepting me, right? We can prove all sorts of things in this life, but we're
Hold on, is he wrong? Can we prove that he's wrong? Can we prove why women were saying no to him? Can we show or know rather why women were saying no to him? Can you read their minds? You can't like this is such a stupid example example to bring up. And going on that again, we're talking about evidence here, not persuasion. I understand that. We don't want you to present persuasion and argument and all other sort of stupid arguments like the ontological argument. We want you to bring evidence and proof. Bro said he can present proof all day long and present evidence of God all day long, but if we're not convinced, yeah, give us actual evidence. That's what we're here for. All this dumb analogy, let's just stick it out of our head because it's nonsense.
whether or not people accept the proof, that's a different issue. Now, for the atheists, what they want is proof that would persuade them on their own terms.
Okay,
Types of
thank you for telling us what we want. And how do you know this? What we're looking for is the evidence of God. Give us evidence. Give us proof. Prove it. You put this burden on yourself. You could have come into this video of how to know God is talking to you or how to know God exists. Like, no, I can prove God exists. Watch me do it.
proofs that they themselves would approve. Now, let's talk about the three ways you can prove God's existence with any atheist. These are generally the three ways that they would accept. The first type of proof we can use is rational type proofs, meaning we can reason on our own with our own minds to conclude that God exists. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on this one because most atheists that I've come into contact with don't think this way. They wouldn't accept this type of proof. For example, the ontological argument is the most popular rationalist argument. It goes like this. God
And
is
I'm
the
going to
great
stop him before he starts talking about the ontological argument, which literally 2 seconds ago I mentioned. Now, it's an argument, not a proof. It's an argument, not evidence. You literally just talk about persuasion and proof. The argument is supposed to persuade us that God exists. Except it's just an argument with no evidence to back it. You can go ahead and play wordplay with it. You can go ahead and play wordplay with everybody. That doesn't change the fact that you have no evidence to support what you're rambling about. And yes, the ontological argument is stupid. Maybe I don't have enough intellectual to understand it, but based on how I understand it, based on how I see that evidence, which many people would say yes, the ontological arguments just seem like a classical wordplay. Like it's stupid. It doesn't prove God. It doesn't give any evidence of God. You're just imagining something and you're saying, yeah, if you imagine it, then the real thing must be better. If I imagine a unicorn with the wings, then the real thing must be better. Maybe that unicorn with the wings actually exists. I did a whole video about it. It doesn't make sense.
Greatest conceivable being, omniscience, omnipotence, etc. Now, this maximally great being must also exist in reality rather than just our minds, because if it only exists in our minds, then it wouldn't really be a maximally great being. So then, God, the greatest conceivable being, must exist in reality. Basically, if you can think about God, then he must exist. So as you can see, this argument starts with your mind and reasons up to God. Now, from the atheist perspective, this is just a bad argument, because from their perspective, they can't conceive of such a being. If you describe this God as perfectly righteous, then he would not allow any evil at all in this world, and I see evil in this world, therefore I don't think such a being exists. So rationalist type proofs are relative. You can make this argument, but so can they. They have their mind and they're reasoning this way, and you have your mind and you're reasoning that way to God. They're going to reason this way away from God. And who's to say who's reasoning correctly? Let's move on to number 2. This is the most common.
I guess that's proof number one. And I searched up the definition of proof. This is according to Merriam-Webster, a contingency of evidence that compels acceptance by the mind of a truth or fact. That's A. B. The process of an instant of establishing the validity of a statement, especially by derivation from other statements in accordance with the principle of reasoning. So I guess argument would count, but I'm going by A, which most atheists would want to go by. Present evidence, no arguments. We're used to arguments. We see arguments. We hear arguments from Christians every 2 seconds, from other theists too. What we want when you say prove that God exists is not more dumb argument. Present evidence to actually back them up. Where's the hand of God? He's supposed to be interacting. You're supposed to be praying to him and he's responding to your prayers. I don't know. Pray for something. Pray for healing for someone who know is in a every bones in their body is shattered and overnight, not even overnight. In the instant that you pray for them, it reattach itself in a supernatural way that we have no explanation for except God did a miracle. Pray for God to show himself to everybody living. We're asking for evidence, not some more dumbo argument.
Common type of proof that atheists want. It's empirical proof, scientific proof, observational data. Seeing is believing. If I don't see it, if I didn't see Jesus rise from the dead, then I have no reason to believe it. A very common empiricism.
Yeah, of course, when they're talking about this, they have to mention the seeing is believing. We don't need to see, we just need actual empirical observable evidence. It doesn't necessarily need to be like, oh, I see it. I don't see Alexander the Great, but there's evidence that Alexander the Great exists.
This type proof is the cosmological argument. You see, we observe all of these causes and effects in the real world. We see all these effects, right? Let's go back to the cause. All effects have causes, therefore there must be an ultimate first cause, and that first cause we call God. Recently, there was this controversy around Mary apparitions supposedly being better proof for Christianity than the Gospels, because there's all sorts of eyewitnesses who sensed this, and it's a lot harder to deny this miracle than the Gospel accounts, right? Now, again, many atheists simply don't find these arguments convincing, at least for the cosmological argument. They just say, yeah, I see cause and effect in the world. However, there's no reason to conclude that this first cause is God, or if there even is a first cause. The fact is, I see all these effects in the natural world. How can I reason from all these natural effects to a supernatural cause? I believe that through scientific observation and experimentation, we're going to find out how the universe came to be, and we don't need to accept your God of the gaps argument. Also, everybody's experiences are different. Let's say there's two people in a car, one in the driver's seat and the other in the passenger seat. The one in the driver's seat looks down and sees a gas pedal and says, hey, there's a gas pedal. I have sensed with my eyes, with my foot, right? I put my foot on the gas pedal. There is a gas pedal. But what about the passenger? He doesn't see a gas pedal. He can't feel a gas pedal. He doesn't see, therefore he does not believe. Also, just take two people growing up in the United States, growing up in the church. One Christian is going to say, hey, I've prayed to God all my life. I've seen him do wonderful things in my life. And this is why I believe, because he just keeps doing good things. Someone who was raised in the church and then falls away from the faith is going to say, I kept praying. I kept reading the Bible. I kept going to church, doing Bible studies, and my dog got run over. I got cancer. My child died. There was a hurricane that blew my house away. I do not see God doing any good things in my life. Therefore, I don't believe in him anymore. They say, even if there is a God, he must be an evil God for bringing all these bad things into my life. So he doesn't deserve my respect. Now, the third way we can prove God's existence.
Jesus Christ. He just rambles on and rambles on. That doesn't prove God. Saying look around, see earth, see trees, that doesn't prove God. These are things that come about from natural processes. The first cause nonsense, we don't know what caused the universe, if anything caused the universe. And just because we observe cause and effect in the universe doesn't mean it applies to the first rule of the universe. Doesn't mean we can apply the same thing that we see to, I don't know, everything that we to everything else. Like, it doesn't make sense to follow. And if you're saying God is the first cause, then doesn't that also meaning something else caused God? Like, it doesn't make sense to stop if you're saying that's the line of reasoning, which, okay, it doesn't make sense to stop a God. You can just say, oh, there must be something that first caused it, so God. That seems to not make any sense. That means there's like an infinite loop of causes. That would be the actual logical reason that you can deduct from saying, oh, the universe was caused by something else, so we're gonna regress in that kind of process.
Existence is using the pragmatic approach. You see, when people stick to the principles of Christ, loving your neighbor as yourself, going to church, there's this community, people loving each other, building each other up in love. Look at Western civilization, which is founded on a lot of Christian values. Just look at all the good that has come out of it. Essentially, Christianity works, therefore it's true. Good things are coming out of it, therefore we should believe in God. Now again, a lot of atheists might not find this convincing, but some do.
I do like that fact that he debunks his own argument, like the dumb one about, oh, you see God's effect around the world, the first cause nonsense. The fact that he presents the debunction for the arguments that I don't even know if that's a word. The fact that he literally debunks his own argument right after he makes them is kind of funny to me.
Some might find the empiricist proofs good. Some might find the rationalist proofs good. But the thing is, all of these are subjective proofs. You can use the same kind of argumentation for a serial killer who believes that the greatest good is killing as many people as he can. It brings him so much joy. He wants to get his message out there. There is no justice in this world. And then he ends his life screaming, I succeeded in my life. The pragmatist proof that killing is a good thing. Some atheists might say, hey, I don't think Christianity works out. Look at all you bigots out there telling us what we should do with our lives, with our bodies. I do not think that Christianity is good for the world. Look at all the division in the church. You call that unity and building each other up in love? Look at all the arguments that we have online, theological debates. So the fact is that these three types of proofs, they can work sometimes. Some people can be convinced by them, but they aren't the ultimate proof, an objective proof that nobody.
What the fuck is the point of mentioning them? What is this? So again, this is all to come to a truth, all to know whether God exists. I'm sorry, you just presented three proofs, three arguments for God's existence, and you're like, well, you can pick and choose which one you want. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it won't work for different people. Isn't this all supposed to work in presenting us like argument to be like, oh, God exists? I mean, none of this are evidence, but these are arguments clearly for God existence. And I guess it depends on the kind of person that you are, the subjective lens to make the argument work, pick your poison type shit. That it makes no sense. When God could easily solve this by not just sending his minions to, like, I don't know, make dumb arguments. And also, Christians have done so much terrible things. Christianity has done so much terrible things that just starting from the bigotry, it is literally undermining the amount of damage that it has done to the world. That's 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 such a stupid argument. That just shows me that you have no fucking idea the the amount of damage the religion has actually done, which means you have not studied history at all.
Can deny. It really does depend on each individual atheist. Some of them are empiricists, some of them are pragmatists, not many of them are rationalists these days. But you really want to ask the atheist these types of questions. What is proof? What kind of proof do you want? How do we prove things? Most of the atheists you're going to come across are going to be empiricists. Oh, scientific observation. I need to see this. If you come across an atheist who's saying, oh, I'm living my life to the fullest and I'm having a good time, that's his pragmatist approach. You have to recognize what approach that they're using and deal with them accordingly. Now, the fourth way of proving God's existence, which is really the only objective way to prove God's existence, because with the other proofs, it's just your word, your thoughts, your reasoning, your experiences versus the atheists. And so you're just going to go back and forth forever. Now, can God work with those other types of proofs to bring someone to repentance? Yes, of course. If the Christian is faithful and trying to incorporate scripture, someone may come to faith because they heard the words of Christ and they believed, right? But the only way to objectively prove God's existence is going to be using transcendental proof. Now, this way of proving things is extremely unnatural to us. We're raised with seeing is believing, scientific observation. Prove to me the Bible is true without using the Bible. Where's the archaeological evidence? Where's what we see in the real world? How does this prove the Bible is true or that God exists, right? That's what we're raised with. That's what I get all the time in the comments. People want that type of proof. We understand that type of proof very well. But the transcendental proof, this is going to be the objective way to prove the existence of God, our ultimate foundation for knowledge. Basically, the transcendental proof says this: without God, you would not be able to prove anything at all in an objective fashion. You see, anytime an atheist asks me, hey, prove to me that the Bible is true, or provide evidence that God exists.
You could substitute that with anything. You could substitute that with anything. That seems jeez.
They are presupposing that my God exists, that it is good to seek knowledge. Evidence is good, truth is good, and they're seeking that end in their own twisted way, of course. God must necessarily exist in order for us to even have this conversation right now. You know, if the atheist view of the universe were true, we evolved from a single-celled life form. Our brains are just bags of chemicals. Your brain is reacting a certain way, my brain is.
I already got it wrong. That's not an atheistic view. That's just evolution. That has nothing to do with atheists. Whether God is real or not, evolution is a fact. Whether atheists are right or wrong, evolution is a separate thing. This is not so hard to get. Whether Muslims are right about their theological view, whether Christians are right, whether Judaism is right, whether Buddhists are right about their theological views, evolution still stands as a fact. Whether you're right or we're right, the earth doesn't just, I don't know, stop rotating, or the earth doesn't just become flat.
is reacting a certain way. All of our thoughts are just a result of chemical reactions. If that were true, how could we know that was true given we are just reacting chemically? How could you know that your chemicals are reacting correctly? The answer is you couldn't. You couldn't know anything at all. So if we take an atheist who is an empiricist, oh, I know everything by my experience, and yet they say that all of their experience is just a result of chemical reactions and everything, they have just destroyed their own foundation for knowledge. Even if we were just bags of chemicals reacting, we couldn't know that. Why would a bag of chemicals that has survived only because it's the most fit in its environment want proof of a transcendent God? Isn't the goal here just to survive? Why don't you want just to survive? The fact is, humans don't live that way. We don't live just to survive. If you want the scriptural version of this argument, let's look at
Yeah, bozo. We live to survive. And we got so good at it. Here we are debating about random shitty topics instead of worrying about, a lion eating us or something like that. That's how good we are at surviving. Obviously, we still have problems in our society because we're humans and we make up problems even when we don't have one. But the goal is to survive. The goal has always been to survive for a living being. I mean, you can't even go days without like your brain going forensic and like telling you to eat something. Like survival is part of it's literally embedded in us. It's part of our instinct. We do things instinctively sometimes, or many times, as I would actually argue, because I don't think there's any free will. But survival is part of the game. Like we're just so good at it. We make life easy for ourselves because of intelligence. So I'm confused. What is everything is a bag of chemicals. Everything is a bag of chemicals. Like tigers are a pack of chemicals, yet they're able to hunt, eat, survive, and live their lives and interact well with other bags of chemicals. That's basically what all this is in your terms. I'm guessing saying bag of chemicals is supposed to be a terrible thing, but like everything is a bag of chemicals. And bags of chemicals are interacting with other bags of chemicals. And we're trying to find the best way to interact with our universe. We're trying to find the best way to understand our universe. A bag of chemicals trying to understand the bigger bags of chemicals. I'm done saying bags of chemicals. But you get what I mean? Like, we're trying to observe what is the universe and is taking the religious lens of saying denying evolution the best way to understand the universe, even with all the evidence that we can observe, or taking an empirical view of observing, doing research, and then coming to a conclusion, a reasonable conclusion based on the evidence. Better. I think anyone with common sense will say observe, take research, take evidence, and then come to a conclusion instead of just saying random shit and I don't know, just wishing and having faith that it's true. It just seems to be stupid.
Matthew chapter 7. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, and the rivers came, and the winds blew and fell against that house, and yet it did not fail, for it had been founded on the rock. And everyone hearing these words of mine and not doing them may be compared to a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, and the rivers came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. You see, we as Christians should be building our house, everything that we do, everything that we think, on the rock, which is God's word. Now, the atheists, they don't want to listen to.
And I'm nitpicking here, but can you actually build a house on a rock? Don't you need some sort of like, I don't know, foundation, which would be needing to dig? Yes, rock are good in supporting the foundation, molding it, but like, can you actually place a house on a rock? Like you're done building the house, can you actually place it on a rock and hope for the best? Like, won't you also blow away? Anyways.
God's word, and they're going to build their thoughts, their way of living on the sand, which is their own word. Who came up with evolution and that we are just bags of chemicals and that humanity has no objective purpose? Humans did, all right?
Yeah, research did. Observing the world did. Observing the universe did. Observing the facts, observing everything and coming to the conclusion, observing the evidence and coming to the conclusion that best explain the evidence that we found. That evolution is true, all matter is made of atoms. I believe I'm saying that right. But everything is made up of atoms, and you could say a bag of chemicals however you want to say it, but like it's just about it. I said I would stop saying bag of chemicals. It's just chemicals interacting with others, complex molecules like us interacting with the universe.
Humans came up with that. Now, how do you know those humans are correct? Did you use empirical methods? Did you
Yes, that's the entire point. Like you can fact check what they did. You could trace back what they did. That's the best part of science. That I could actually, I don't know, when I see a recording of a video of, let's even use something simple. Let's not say it's like, physics or some chemistry class. Let's take something example of I see a baking on Instagram and I go ahead, follow the recipe, and I came out with the same thing. This doesn't always work out because I usually subtract recipes. I don't follow it exactly because I'm me. But like, you follow the exact same recipe that they post, if they're being honest about the recipes, and you came out with the same conclusion. You came out with the same product. And if you don't, then you probably repost and be like, hey, this is shitty recipe. It didn't work. And then the person will probably comment, okay, let me send you the actual recipe or something along that line. But like, you can check their work. That's the entire point. You can look back and be like, let me try to reproduce this, replicate this. I mean, God, that's science. Good job. That's science.
use the scientific method to find out that there is no meaning to life? Did you objectively
That's based on your subjective view. There's no objective thing saying that there's no objective view to life because that doesn't make any sense because it's subjective. You find purpose for your life. If you want to be a scientist, a doctor, a firefighter, anything that you want to be, you choose that. And maybe other people influence your choice, but you're leading. It's just a bag of, again, it's just people choosing what they want to be. That's a subjective thing. It's not objective. There's no science that's saying, oh, there's no objective value to your life, or like there's no value or purpose to your life. If you're saying there's an objective value or an objective purpose from God to your life, then I don't think that makes any sense considering that the people don't believe in your specific God. So saying there's an objective purpose to your life and it's to worship God seems to make no sense. That's just you as an individual going by that path of dedicating your entire life to nonsense, which you can do. It's subjective in terms of purpose.
pragmatically examine that there is no objective to life? The answer is obviously not. And most of them will admit this, that they have no true knowledge of any of these things. And so with their
Yeah, and where the clips, where the research papers, they're saying, yes, we all wrong. We're just all making this up. It's all a scam. This is so stupid. And again, science won't tell you there's no purpose to your life. It just doesn't make sense. And if anything, it would be to survive, which we're doing quite well at, and so well that we're causing demise to our own species all around the world.
their theory of knowledge, the way that they look at the world, they undercut knowledge itself. Knowledge becomes impossible. It all just becomes, I think this, I think that, you think this, you think that. And so we can just go home. We just have to coexist. Yet at the same time, hey, you Christian, you can't do that to me. You can't tell me what to do with my body. They're living as if there are objective moral values.
That doesn't make any sense. So you say we can agree on anything, you go home, we coexist. And then the next sentence is saying Christians trying to impose their dumb rules on everybody else. Does it not go against what atheists want? The non believers want everybody to just coexist and live their lives. We don't live like there's an objective truth. We live like there's a subjective truth, a subjective purpose that we, I guess, impose on ourselves.
Humans should be acting in such a way. They believe that scientific experimentation and knowledge of the universe exploration is a good thing. So anytime they're bringing up any objection to the existence of God, they are presupposing
Yeah, it's a good thing because, I don't know, maybe they will make another microwave, an invention for exploration that could be brought back to Earth to benefit us and make our lives even much more easier. So me paying tax dollars, me paying my taxes, which I don't have an option, but me choosing, if it's a choice, to pay my tax dollars to fund these things, which are really, really low percentage of the budget of United States going to this stuff, but me paying tax dollars, my taxes to go into this things and fund it is beneficial to me because the things that they find in their research would better help my ass survive. If you want to say the objective goal, at least based on our instincts, is to survive, that will be very, very accurate. Of course, evolution tells us how we became this, how we come to this, not where we're going. So again, like I don't get how we can even reason with what he's saying. It doesn't make sense.
a sense of right and wrong, truth and lie, which only makes sense within the Christian worldview. So they
No, it doesn't, because anything can be right or wrong in the Christian worldview. It just depends on whether God commands it. The divine command theory. It doesn't make sense to say this. Like, this is so stupid. Is it right to kill children? You probably say no, but when you look in the Bible, at least I don't know. When you look into the Bible, you will see multiple times that God command killing children, or God even did it himself. Like the Ten Commandments is basically useless because you have multiple examples in the Bible of God enacting something, commanding something that goes strictly against the Ten Commandments, and humans were the one doing it. Not even just God. God commands humans to do it, meaning humans are going against the Ten Commandments that He imposed on them. Where the fuck do you find the objective moral value in that? When it's solely subjective to not only God, but to humans and how they fucking interpret it to be. Thou shalt not kill. That only applies to the people in your nation. Or maybe it applies to everybody. Who the fuck knows? All due to interpretation.
they step onto our rock to argue against the rock. Okay, they argue against God's word by presupposing truths that God has ingrained into them. That is objective morality. The moral law has been written on their hearts. They know that the heavens are beautiful because they're telling the glory of God and the work of his hands. They just don't want to give him credit for that. Biology, geology, astronomy. There are atheists out there spending their lives studying these things, not because they believe that they're just a bag of chemicals and all of this is useless and there is no greater good coming out of what they're doing. If they truly believed in atheism, they wouldn't be acting the way they do. No, it's just when you ask
I make videos on the internet, I guess you could say debunking and pointing out the stupidity in people like you and their argument because it's fun. because I want to, and I can stop anytime that I want. Scientists go into the field to study because they find it interesting. They're curious enough to spend their entire life to find out what is true. They're curious enough to spend their entire existence, the one life they get, to find out how things work. Curiosity is actually part of our existence. It's part of humans. It's part of humans. There's literally a bunch of stories about this because it's part of us being curious about things, being curious about how things work. So scientists doing this, it's not much of a jump. Again, like I said, subjective purpose. You create it for yourself. There's no objective purpose. And when you ask questions, what's the objective purpose from God? It would be, I don't know, to worship Him. That seems to be really, really not what you're doing either with all your time. The Christians are doing multiple things, including being scientists. Isn't your objective purpose to worship God? Why are you not doing that 24/7?
Them these types of questions that they become inconsistent. You see, their desire for any proof of God it proves that they know God. There is such a thing as proof, objective truth, which they cannot make sense out of. So those first three types of proof, you
And we're done. I don't think we need to hear the last 1 minute. So, number one, prove the ontological arguments. Number two, the empirical, which is basically look around you, see all this trees, see all this nice stuff. The third argument I couldn't remember because it was that bad. And the fourth argument being the them asking for proof itself is evidence that they know that God exists. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this guy is clearly on something because it doesn't make any sense. Life it's complex, but we decide where to go with it. We decide what we're doing, which are definitely influenced by multiple things. Because I don't believe in like people actually ultimately being the one that choose something, but nonetheless, it's not like an objective purpose to it. We make it whatever we want to make it. Our moral values could be traced back to evolution, which could be based on that even, and could be expanded upon because evolution doesn't tell us where we're going. We don't base our morality on God because God is not even a good foundation for multiple for anything. God is not a good foundation for anything. He's not a good foundation for reasoning because he doesn't actually want you to seek the truth. Considering Jesus said, I am the way, the life, and the truth, or whatever the fuck he said, he doesn't want us to search for the truth. And here's where you get the dumb lack of reasoning in the Christian community. With this guy getting 59K subscribers on his account, what doesn't make any sense. How do you make a video like this and say how to convince an atheist, prove the God's existence so any atheist and come out saying nonsense, confidently saying nonsense? Well, that's the end of this video. I'm done. It's kind of hard to watch videos like this and be like, and now like pity this bozo because like You actually have atheists responding to your videos. You're actually open to their arguments. You debunk argument one, two, and even three by presenting their counter arguments. And how do you not see that the counter arguments actually make sense? The Bible cannot be the proof of God simply because the people that wrote the Bible believe in God and they were actually trying to convince us all that God exists by even embedding stories. The story are not true accounts of what happened. They embedded fairy tales in it. Yes, some evidential things are in there, like some historical things in there actually happened. But for the most part, it's really an account of fairy tales, and people trying to, I don't know, use the Bible as a political tools, which we see evidence of that in it. We're done. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Have a lovely day, people.